Candidates Tournament takes place from the 3rd to the 22nd of April in Toronto. 8 players slugging it out to see who will face Ding Liren for the world title. I always love the candidates. It's really, it's so dramatic. There's one big prize and there are so many stories and there's so many twists and turns, and I'm sure this is going to be really special. So I'm previewing all the players, and this time I'm looking at Ramesh Babu Pragnanandhaa, 18 years old, from Chennai in India. He qualified for the candidates by reaching the final of the FIDE World Cup in August last year. In the semi-final he defeated Caruana. In the final he met Carlsen. 2 classical games were drawn, but Carlsen won in the rapid tiebreak. But I think that shows how far Pragg has come, where he's mixing it with the top 2 players in the world. And last year felt like a real breakthrough for Pragg, actually. With every tournament he seemed to improve. In fact, he had a run of 47 classical games without loss. So he's becoming much more consistent, much more solid. And I think to get to the very top, that's an essential quality. Having said that, he's currently playing in the Prague Masters tournament and he's just lost 2 games in a row. So there you go. All good things come to an end. But generally, you know, he's had an incredible year. He also, apart from becoming more solid, of course, he has an incredible ability to calculate. And he's a very imaginative player. And we're going to see that in this game from the FIDE World Cup last year. Pragg has black and he's playing French Grandmaster Maxime Lagarde. So here we go. E4, E5. We're looking at it from Pragg's viewpoint. Well, we know the result of the game, so I'm not giving anything away by looking at it from his side of the board. So it's a Spanish. And Pragg plays knight e7. Now that's a tricky sideline, rather unusual. So it's clear that he feels he ought to be beating Lagarde. You know, he wants to try and shake it up. Carlsen, incidentally, has played like this on occasion. Knight c3. So rapid development from white, very sensible policy. And at this stage, after these exchanges, that's a beautiful position for the queen. Looks like white is doing extremely well already. But now comes the fight back. c6, so that knocks back the bishop. And queen b6, excellent move. Challenging the powerful queen. And if there's an exchange, then that improves black's pawn structure and gives the rook a semi-open file. So the queen goes back to d3. Bishop e7. Pragg castles quickly. And now white goes for it, f4. Whenever the f-pawn advances, well, that always raises the stakes, and particularly as white can't castle kingside very easily. Pragg castles and h4. So white is really going for it. Offering a pawn, well, if that's taken, not a good idea, because then, well, let's say b3, bishop b2, castles queenside, and there's a ready-made attack on the h-file. So no, that wouldn't be good. So how do you react against this? You know, white threatens to push the pawn, and that's already looking pretty nasty for black. You know, imagine if the knight is consigned to the corner. Not good. d5. Classical play. You meet a flank attack with a central attack. And the idea is to conquer the f5 square. So if this is taken, then that square can be used. The knight can bounce around here, or maybe a bishop can come there. But Lagarde, well, he just presses on. He's trying to sort of seize the initiative. Pawn takes pawn. And if knight takes, yeah, the knight will come to h4 and black can use the f5 square. So Lagarde plays queen g3. He's pressing hard. He wants to stop that knight coming into h4. And if the knight goes back, then white has a really nice initiative. But here is where Pragg was really inspired. Knight h4 anyway. Don't back down. So rook takes. And here's the point. Queen g1 check. So this is getting wild and wacky already. Bishop f1. Now, what's the big deal? I mean, if black takes here, then, well, you know, black has run out of pieces. You're only attacking with the queen. There's nothing going on. I mean, with two minor pieces against a rook, white just stands well. Okay, so what do you play as black? What's Pragg's big idea? Time for you to have a think. Time for me to have a drink. Cheers. Now, I mentioned Pragg's imagination. I can imagine many players reaching this point and just kind of giving up, thinking, well, black's attack is coming to nothing. E3. It's incredible, but this brilliant move turns the game in black's favour. So what's the big idea? Well, one thing is that if, well, let's say white plays knight e2 attacking the queen, well, now we can see the threat. You give a check, exchange queens, and then you take the rook. Black wins material. So that's a threat. Okay, well, what about, I don't know, let's move the rook. Let's say rook h2. Okay, not a beautiful square. Then watch this, bishop c5. Black happily goes into an endgame and actually has an absolutely fantastic attack. The king is vulnerable. Obviously that pawn is superbly placed on f2, but that rook just paralyzes white's pieces, and black has a winning position incredibly. So what else can white do? Well, Lagarde played knight d1, so that prevents queen f2 check. So where does black go from here? I mean, white is simply threatening to take on e3 now, and the queen is in trouble. So again, Pragg shows wonderful imagination. Rook e8, a very simple move. Very powerful. So basically this prevents bishop takes e3, because if here, bishop takes h4. And that opens up the rook's line towards the king, and I mean this gives black a winning attack. So there's trouble. I mean, basically black now threatens to take and push, and that's winning. Okay, so king e2. I mean, it looks like a crazy move, but you have to defend against e2. Okay, now what for black? Well, very simple move. Bishop e6, just bringing more pieces into the game, threatens bishop c4 check. So b3, and now rook d8. So I love this. After a couple of precise moves, e3, rook e8, Pragg is just bringing his pieces into the attack. I mean, it's a very messy position, but Pragg has assessed it accurately. He understood he's winning this one. So let's have a look what happened. Knight takes e3. Okay, an important pawn to capture, but of course that opens the e-file. Bishop f6, hitting the rook. Rook b1. There's no need for black to take this. That would actually, to some extent, free white. At the moment, that queen has to hang on to the rook. And now another simple move, bishop f5. So you can see all black's pieces in play now. Those bishops looking fantastic. The rooks cutting down the central files. Beautiful position. Queen f2. Now you could exchange queens and take the rook, but actually that's not so clear. After g3 you can see both bishops are attacked. Pragg comes up with something much better. Okay, over to you again. Black to play. This is wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Black to play. Bishop takes rook. What's the big idea? Well, if queen takes queen, bishop g4 is mate. out of the blue. Fantastic position. Therefore, queen takes bishop, and bishop takes pawn, hitting the rook. And also, the bishop is going to cut back to d3 and take here. I mean, it's a winning position for black, actually. So Lagarde took on d8, gave up his queen. It's the only way to continue. So now we've got a position where black has queen against 3 minor pieces. Now, in some positions, the minor pieces are a match for the queen, but only when they have good support. If they're loose, and there are other factors at play in the position, then there's trouble. And the other big factor in play here, of course, is white's king is very exposed. So this should be a win for the queen, particularly, yeah, it's an open position. And the queen is just like a guided missile. You know, it senses weaknesses and can attack them very easily on an open board. And that's what Pragg did here, queen c5. 2 loose pieces, and the queen manages to attack them both, even though they're on different parts of the board. So this should be good for black. Knight e3. He now plays rook e8. You could just take this pawn on h5, but rook e8. King f3. Queen d4, threatening queen e4 check. And the king came back again. So Pragg decided to repeat. Queen c5, and that threatens to take check here. So the king came back. And then he took the pawn on h5, having found that he wasn't winning immediately. So he just decided to just keep things ticking along. Queen h1 check. I love the way this queen has bounced around the angles. That just shows, you know, on an open board, it's just incredibly strong. Rook e6. The rook is about to enter the game. And now it's just a case of cracking open white's king. And Pragg does this very efficiently. Here we go. Let's just finish things off. It doesn't take too long. There's just one very crafty bit at the end. So that is a nice move, preventing white's king from running away from the middle. And then this was the final move. f5 check. Nice little tactical finish. So if knight takes, queen d3, king e5, queen d5 mate. And if king takes, queen g6, king e5, queen e6 mate. Nice kind of mirror. What a fantastic game. I mean, Pragg's imagination here is wonderful to behold. First of all, this whole idea with knight h4 and then queen g1 check. But you can only go in for this if you've appreciated that e3 actually keeps you on the board. And then even after that, knight d1 and rook e8. Really subtle, absolutely beautiful, and completely sound, by the way. So I look forward to seeing how PRAGGNANANDHAA gets on in the candidates. It would be wonderful if he did well. It really would. I think this year the candidates might have come a bit too soon for him. But he's only 18. He still has time. In a way, this is kind of a free hit. You know, he can look forward to playing the candidates in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years' time. And he'll just be getting better and better. Anyway, it's going to be fascinating. So, more previews coming your way soon. If you enjoy the channel, if you want to see more videos, then do check out PowerPlayChess, patreon.com, and do support the channel. According to how much you contribute, you get extra videos, newsletter, and join the chat on Patreon as well. Thanks for watching.